Slot afterwards, Curtis Jones after the game, both said we had a plan for Cole and they pulled it off. And Curtis Jones was the difference.
Liverpool still top of the table, but it could have been oh so different if their tactical ding-dong with Chelsea at Anfield, if the balance had just tipped the other way. We are back after last week's excellent preview show in the Tactics Exposed studio. I'm joined as always by SunSport's tactical guru, Dean Scoggins. Dean, bit of a cagey affair at Anfield, and you have got 5 things that you noticed from the game that fans should be keeping an eye on.
Cagey, but tactically great. So first of all, Arne Slot's genius traffic jam that he created to cut off the passing lanes for Cole Palmer. It was double bubble for Curtis Jones. 2 positions in one, and he got them both brilliantly right. Gakpo and Jones is the other thing. They stayed right on a rope with each other, close enough to touch each other a lot of the times. And Liverpool's patience in that game of tactical chicken that we talked about preview-wise. And then it was so close, as you said, but no Cigar for Maresca. Chelsea were really good, but just not quite good enough to be better than Liverpool at Anfield.
Well, look, Dino, we'll have a look at the things we said last week, how they played out on those 5 points you mentioned. Just on the whole, what did you make of the game? Because on the face of it, it never really felt like it got going. But then, as I'm starting watching matches a bit more like you do these days, you felt that was because there was quite a lot of cancelling each other out going on?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about it in the previous show about the game of chicken and who would blink first and who would give a bit. You asked me who would give a bit. And actually, it was Slot who gave a bit, and he played a lot of respect to Maresca and the way that Chelsea was set up early on. 3 or 4 times we saw just the Chelsea 4-man press, not pressing, not going anywhere. Yep. And they just allowed the goalkeeper, who had an up and down afternoon, just allowed him to have the ball and not press in those areas. But for me, it was how they were going to cope with Cole Palmer. And Slot afterwards, Curtis Jones after the game, both said we had a plan for Cole and they pulled it off.
Yeah, it seemed weird. Like, both managers seemed really happy afterwards. And Pedro Neto as well for Chelsea seemed pretty delighted with the performance, even though they lost. We bigged it up for a 3-all, 4-all or a 5-all. It was that little bit more respectful. Cole Palmer was obviously the area of focus for us. And it was this traffic jam trick that Arne Slot employed that cut off those passing lanes, as you mentioned. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so, you know, it could have been a high-scoring draw if there'd been an early goal, but because of the way they sort of stood off each other a little bit at the beginning was one thing, but also, yeah, the Cole Palmer thing. So, we talk about passing lanes, OK? We've talked about that on shows before where unselfish runners will open up the passing lanes so you can play the ball down those gaps in between.
Corridors.
Those corridors between centre-backs and left-backs or between midfield players and left midfield players. But what they did, Liverpool, was you would think when looking at them, they're going to start off with Gravenberch and Curtis Jones in sort of a pair and Szoboszlai ahead in that 4-2-3-1 formation. Yep. But what they did was they allowed Curtis Jones, or they wanted Curtis Jones, to drift over into Cole Palmer's channel to stop him receiving the ball in those lanes. And that's not because he's not doing a man-marking job, because as soon as Chelsea have got the ball going the other way, or as soon as Liverpool have got the ball defensively, he's not picking up Palmer. Yep. What he's doing is he's picking up the Cole Palmer passing lane. And then he had help from Gakpo, from the striker, from the left-back inside. But what he's doing is crowding that area.
And is it like we spoke about last week, or you told everyone, that how much Colwill gets the ball and how those direct balls to the forward line, they often skip out the midfield entirely, normally Jackson, sometimes Palmer as well, to then come back in and then Chelsea are in behind.
Absolutely,
Is that what Gakpo is trying to thwart?
Exactly that. And Curtis Jones is almost hiding at times. We've talked about that as a defender before. They're waiting to pounce and jump out of position, as we said.
Like the ghost defender.
Absolutely. And you saw Levi Colwill quite a few times in the game sort of go to play the pass and actually then stop and put his foot on top of the ball. Yep. That's because he's had one look up and he's seen 4 red shirts in that lane where he wants to pass it. So they've done really, really well there. And Curtis Jones has been given this incredible amount of responsibility. it would have been a debate of whether he was going to start the game. Yep. But maybe it's because Slot's had him for a week on the training ground, other than the fact he became a dad this week, so he's probably not had a lot of sleep.
Did the old ball under the shirt,
absolutely fantastic stuff as well, because that was him going the other way. But yeah, it was just a brilliant tactical performance from Curtis Jones, and he was their best player defensively, he was the best player in midfield, and he was their best attacker as well.
Well, let's talk about that, because I felt he was the standout performer. He was heavily involved, as you say, at both ends of the pitch. How did he ace the two positions in one that you're talking about?
Exactly, and so Slot's genius here is knowing that if you pick up that passing lane in front of Palmer, not only are you doing that job defensively for me, but then when we get the ball back, nobody's picking you up.
Yeah.
So he's the man who's unmarked. In that Chelsea setup where they have that box in midfield and then they've got the inverted fullback, so three at the back, you've got a Chelsea winger one side, a Liverpool winger one side, sorry. You've got a Liverpool winger the other and a Liverpool striker. And then everybody else is picked up apart from Jones. Yeah. So we see on his goal, we can show that he's actually going back into his defensive position, and then he realises Liverpool have got the ball. It comes out to the right-hand side, and Jones is the one who thinks, I'm unmarked. I'm going to keep running. And he just keeps going. And no one's picked me up, no one's picked me up. In to score. It was the same for the penalty that was given. It was the same for the penalty that wasn't given. So it's fantastic from Slot and his team, and then, of course, from Jones in carrying it out. You can have an idea, but your player's got to carry it out. And it was just defensively, brilliant, and then I'm the one that can get in there unmarked.
Yeah, it felt a little bit, to me, Dino, you were talking about, and we talked about a little bit of a risk maybe from Chelsea with the inverted fullbacks, but obviously it wasn't Cucurella, but like Malo Gusto. I was looking out for that quite a lot. It felt that actually they didn't do that through the respect thing and perhaps not wanted to be as gung-ho as we suggested they might be. Do you think that inevitably and weirdly actually played into Jones's hands rather than detracted?
It really did, and they really missed Cucurella. We can't get away from that. They missed him, and because they switched Gusto to left back to do that job, and we'll come back to Gusto's position in a minute because that was quite interesting, but because they did that, that meant that, and they picked Lavia. So Lavia being a more defensive midfielder meant that it was Lavia and Caicedo who stayed deeper, and Gusto was the one who played sort of higher up in that four-man group. But that was on the left-hand side of Chelsea's play, and Palmer was the right. Yeah. And the Jones, Gakpo / Diaz defensive issue was on the other side of the group. And to me, it was disappointing from Reece James, really. Reece James was the one who had more space because Gakpo and Jones were doing that defensive job. Yeah. Reece James had more and more space on that side and didn't really utilise it, and they didn't get the ball to Noni Madueke enough.
Yeah, so Reece James, if he was in the pitch a bit more, he might have been able to combat Jones going forward. Yeah. He wasn't, so you think, OK, leaves us a bit more defensively exposed, but James is going to have more space and time going forward, which he didn't utilise. Is that what you're effectively saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the patience that Liverpool showed in that game of chicken means that it's waiting for that moment that they're overloaded.
Cody Gakpo and Curtis Jones, first of all, right? Attached by a piece of string or a piece of rope is how you've put it. And again, that was in order to thwart Cole Palmer, which it was clear Liverpool put a lot of effort into doing in the build-up to this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to give a hat tip to my son here, who has actually spotted it in the first half as we were watching it. So it's rubbing off,
Hang on
right?
a minute. Is this just a Scoggins tactical dynasty?
It is, absolutely. Straight away, we saw Gakpo in front, or he did, and then we watched it for the rest of the time. Gakpo in front of Jones, OK? So, again, another interesting selection was Gakpo instead of Diaz. I mean, it's off the back of an international week, so obviously we don't really know the fitness things and the travel things going into it. But Gakpo was chosen as the left-hand side attacker for Liverpool. But what he did was come in and block that passing lane with Jones, OK? And he was as far away as you and I are all the time. He's got him screening in front of him. And that will mean that two things. Curtis Jones is going, go to your left, go to your left, go to your right, go to your right. Jones is leading that, OK? Jones can see everything. He's telling him this way or the other. And then if the ball gets switched to the other side and Jones has to move back into a position that he leaves Palmer, Gakpo then picks Palmer up. Right. So they're working in tandem to 2-on-1. And that's where I meant about Reece James, where those two are 2-on-1 on Palmer. So Reece James is the man who's free, and Noni Madueke is then 1v1 against Robertson. So, but yeah, let's not take away from that plan. Chelsea's best player, Cole Palmer, stop Cole Palmer, and you go a long way to stopping Chelsea, and that was a brilliant plan.
Yeah, you want to be a bit careful, Dino. If there's a younger, better-looking Scoggins out there who's got all of your tactical nous...
Well, he's definitely younger and he's definitely better looking.
So. You could be out of a job pretty quickly. Right, this game of chicken, we made a big thing about that in the preview show on Tactics Exposed, and I was quite looking forward to it, to be honest. I think the respect both managers paid each other meant that it didn't end up quite as much of a basketball game as perhaps we were hoping for. But it was more Liverpool's patience that avoided that, yet they somehow still managed to, it appeared, press high up and put pressure on Robert Sanchez, who, like you said, isn't the best with the ball at his feet.
Yeah, I mean, Maresca made a point at the end of praising the goalkeeper, but he didn't have a great day.
That feels like sports day, doesn't it? When your kid comes seventh in the race.
Yeah, and Liverpool. If this was Ederson or Alisson in the Chelsea goal, they might have had a bit more, or David Raya as well. They might have had a bit more of a problem. But they did exactly what we said they would do, where the goalkeeper comes in and makes it a back four.
Yep.
Colwill went to the right, Sanchez comes in and becomes the extra ball player in there. But instead of pressing on them, which we didn't know whether they'd jump out of position, Liverpool, and go and do that, Liverpool just set up and said, well, go on then, break us down.
Similar to they did at Old Trafford?
Exactly, yeah. And waited for that first pass.
Yeah.
Waited for that first pass.
And then you go.
And then you
That's
go,
the trigger.
Absolutely. But only go if you've got enough players to go.
Yeah.
So if you've overloaded because you've pushed 4 on, you're then 3v2 in midfield, so you don't.
It's less of a high press these days, right?
Exactly, yeah. Much. I think in fancy terms you call it a mid-press. Yeah. But really, it's, look, the goalkeeper, he did it once in the first half where he hit this fantastic long ball over the top and put somebody through one-on-one. I think it was Sancho he put through one-on-one. But look, if he's doing that, you've probably won the game of chicken. You're not allowing him to just dictate play. And also what it meant was Szoboszlai was, and I love Szoboszlai, he's so good tactically. It was basically, if the goalkeeper's got it, let him have it.
Yep.
If he passes it to Levi Colwill, then stop Colwill playing it.
Yep.
So he was the one who jumped out and then again blocked that passing
while
lane.
The lines are blocked.
Exactly, while the lines are blocked. So then Colwill can't go into Palmer, into Caicedo, and then, just a great defensive ploy.
You're sort of forcing them out their comfort zone.
Yes, exactly, and getting them to do something that Maresca doesn't want them to do. Because, again, both teams are so well drilled and they've got such a good tactical plan, they don't want to deviate from it. And there was a really great moment that I spotted in the game where Curtis Jones was actually turning to slot and going like this, and he's jumping out of position. What do we do?
Yeah.
We're getting overloaded there, and Slot actually shouted, and it was to Szoboszlai, was stop jumping out, come back in. And then they just, again, you could see them set up as a 5 again, and it was, again, I'm a purist, so it was great to watch as a tactical masterclass.
Klopp's gegenpress out the window, it appears. Look, just while we're on that, before we move on, Dino, on the goalkeeper point, right? You mentioned Robert Sanchez there. You and I were both at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday lunchtime and watched Alphonse Areola trying to carry out Julian Lopetegui's instructions for West Ham. Do you think that Sanchez and Areola, and it appears to me a few goalkeepers in the Premier League, are being forced into quite uncomfortable positions, i.e. taking a lot more of an active part in the game with the ball at their feet, which they're not necessarily used to, and it's actually getting teams in as much trouble as it is benefiting them?
Well, it risk-reward again, and, and that, that's why Arsenal signed David Raya and got rid of Aaron Ramsdale, because he just couldn't, he wasn't good enough, fantastic shot stopper, and wasn't good enough at the ball and playing those 25, 30-yard passes. I would suggest that Chelsea's shopping list will include a very expensive ball-playing goalkeeper.
Well, Kepa's doing all right at Bournemouth. Perhaps they could, pick him up. Right, Enzo Maresca, close but no cigar for his tension ball tactic, ultimately. But there were still some bright sparks from Malo Gusto and Noni Madueke. In a similar sort of system, you could see what they were trying to do, but just didn't quite work.
Yeah, and it was really interesting to see Gusto's position, because, as I said before, I didn't expect Lavia to start. Again, maybe it was something to do with Enzo Fernandez, his international break and getting back late. But if it was a tactical thing, then they adapted very well. But Gusto from left back is not inverting into the deeper midfield role, which is what they've been doing before with him or Cucurella on those sides. What Gusto was doing was playing like a left 10.
Yeah.
So he was going from left back right up, and he was working really, really hard. He didn't get enough of the ball, and he wasn't good enough on the ball in that position yesterday. But, you know, let's give him some credit. The work rate he was putting in, which meant they could retain that four-man square shape in midfield. And Lavia and Caicedo was the deeper men. And look, it was very clear to see in a tactical shape, as if you watch the game like I do, and then that meant that Gusto was in that area that hopefully he was trying to free up Sancho or Jackson. And when the goal came, it was that tension in midfield as well, where then it comes to Caicedo. Jackson made a brilliant run. One of the what we talked about in the preview show with the West Ham run, came in, went round, and Caicedo plays him up the middle. So that's what they're trying to do.
That's for his goal, you mean?
That's for his goal,
I mean, it was exactly what you described effectively, wasn't it? Slightly different in the build-up, but then it's still a straight ball down the middle. It looks so basic, and you're watching Liverpool.
But that's because he's created that tension. That's the tension in the area that he wants to be. And then you've got players who are good enough to hit that pass afterwards. And a couple of times in the first half, they didn't quite get it right. And we need to talk about Curtis Jones' tracking back with Palmer as well, because a couple of times when they did get that right and got Noni Madueke down that right-hand side, Curtis Jones being the one who tracked back and blocked Palmer for that chance. There was also this genius moment from Cole Palmer where it looks so simple. It's what Eric Cantona used to do. It's what Teddy Sheringham used to do. The whole game's moving that way, and then they think, oh, no, stop. And just by stopping, you buy yourself that 3 yards of space.
Everyone else carries on.
And that was the only mistake Curtis Jones made in the whole game, because he carried on. Madueke plays it back to Palmer, and Palmer misses the chance that goes over. Yeah. So it was almost from Chelsea. You're not going to expect them to go to Anfield and rip Liverpool apart, but they went there with a really clear tactical plan. They played quite well. With the Chelsea fans at the end were very, very complimentary. Big applause. It was quite a statement to go there and still play your way and still have your tactical plan and not deviate and just concede possession to Liverpool and say it's OK, we're just going to defend at Liverpool. It was a proper performance, and an early goal, if they got that early goal, it might have been quite different.
Do you think there was any naivety in there from Maresca, or do you think if they play like that out of 10 times, that perhaps they win half of them? How do you see it? Would you tweak it next time?
No, I think more than half. I think they've shown that they're a really good side. And, you know, and Liverpool are a quality side as well. And as we said, we'd see this as a test in this game of how good these two teams are. And let's be honest, they are both very, very good. The quality of that game was very high.
So is it fair to say that you think it was pretty much a draw from a tactical perspective, just perhaps a couple of Chelsea's players letting Maresca down?
I would say 6 and 6 from the tactical point of view, and Curtis Jones was the difference.